This is a CBC podcast.
Closer to home on Wednesday night in Glace Bay, 3 of the 4 candidates for Cape Breton-Canso faced off in a debate hosted by CBC at Glace Bay High School. There are 4 candidates in Cape Breton-Canso. They are Liberal incumbent Mike Callaway, Conservative Fiona McLeod, and for the NDP, Jana Reddick. There is a 4th candidate for the People's Party of Canada. His name is Brad Grandy. He was unable to attend. And they fielded a variety of questions on topics from healthcare and economic development to the moderate livelihood fishery and climate change. By the way, we have our Sydney-Victoria debate coming up next week. If you'd like to get a question on the agenda, send it to us at info_morning@cbc.ca. So our format is a very tightly timed format, moderated by me. The questions were coming from the moderator, the chair, from me. They had 1 minute each to address the question at hand, followed by 2 minutes of open debate and discussion. So here's an excerpt this hour from our Cape Breton-Canso debate in Glace Bay on Wednesday night. Up next, we have, shortly on the heels of a big topic like climate change, another significant topic for the future of this country, we're going to talk about reconciliation. So starting us off for 1 minute each on this topic is going to be Mike Callaway, then Fiona McLeod, then Jana Reddick. So on the topic of reconciliation, what do you think of the progress of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action? What steps would you take personally as the MP, and what further steps should the Canadian government take to advance the cause of reconciliation with Indigenous communities? So on the topic of reconciliation, where we've come so far, and what yet needs to be done, and your role in that as a Member of Parliament, representing everybody in your riding, including Indigenous people. Mike Callaway of the Liberals.
Thanks, Steve. And you said it, we have come far, but not far enough. We need to make strategic investments in continuing to lifting the boil orders in communities. We have done so for 109. More needs to be done. We need to continue the discussions and negotiations nation to nation. That's key. We need to listen to First Nations communities and leadership. When it comes to burial sites and other items that are horrific to all Canadians, this government will put its resources and money in partnership with the First Nations communities to rectify a wrong. And here's the other thing. When it comes to children that were taken away from their parents, we need to do right by First Nations and sit down nation and nation and discuss rightful compensation.
Mike Callaway of the Liberals. On the topic of reconciliation, Fiona McLeod of the Conservative Party.
At this point in Canada's history, it is crucial that our efforts are focused on durable solutions that make a real and meaningful impact on the quality of life of Indigenous peoples. Recent reports, including the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the National Inquiry on Missing and Indigenous Women and Girls, have identified significant gaps in opportunity and outcome between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. Canada's Conservatives will develop a comprehensive plan to implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. We will fund the investigation at all former residential schools in Canada where unmarked graves may exist, including the sites where children have already been discovered. We will consult with First Nations on overhauling the current funding models, with the goal of making it easier for First Nations to escape third-party management, reducing red tape, and providing a clearer path with better incentives to move forward.
All right, thank you very much, Fiona McLeod. Jana Reddick, your thoughts on where we've come so far on the calls to action on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and your vision for what further steps should be taken by the Canadian government, especially your involvement as a Member of Parliament.
Well, I definitely think we've done I think it's been terrible what we've done as far as the Truth and Reconciliation Act, and especially towards missing and murdered Indigenous women. It's despicable how these women have just been tossed aside and how the government has treated so many of these Indigenous children and youth. Really, we also want a nation-to-nation relationship. We want to make sure that they have safe housing and clean water, and that has to happen now. And the thing is, the Liberal government doesn't fight for Indigenous rights. They fight against Indigenous kids right now.
Janet Reddick of the NDP, thank you very much. An open discussion on the topic of reconciliation. Your thoughts on what kind of progress has been made and what steps you would take to bring things further along, starting out with you, Mike Kellaway of the Liberals.
Well, it's a consistent work in progress. And when we look at affordable and accessible housing in First Nations communities, we'll take a local example. And we're working very closely with Chief Annie Daisley, where we're able to fund $1.4 million in affordable housing to Wakeba. This is around local representation and making an impact in your local riding and making an impact on the national and regional stage. That's what I've been doing. I've been working hand in glove with the First Nations community as my riding, and that will never, ever stop.
Janet Reddick of the NDP.
You know, I think for too long, Indigenous people here have had to work with, for lack of a better word, wolf in sheep's clothing. I think really when you know that your government is out there fighting against children and their right to money after being abused in this system that we've created or the government has created, I'm not sure why you're going to pat yourself on the back and say we're doing a great job.
Mike Kellaway of the Liberals, you wanted in?
Well, thank you, Steve. I didn't say we were doing an unbelievable, incredible job and no progress can be made. I've been working in the 5 First Nations communities since 2000, and it's a work in progress that's built on trust, work ethic, integrity. That's what I have. That's what I bring to the table.
Fiona MacLeod on reconciliation and where you think things are now and where they should go.
Mike, I respect your efforts with the Indigenous communities. However, you are part of a party that 6 years ago enveloped the Indigenous communities, spoke about what you were going to do, including deliver on clean water. And while you've built houses you spoke of, what's the point of building a house when you can't drink the water?
So briefly, before we finish, what steps would you take immediately?
So, as I said earlier, we are ready to utilize I didn't say this one earlier, sorry. We're ready to utilize the existing infrastructure of Indigenous national organizations, provide capacity building.
All right. Thank you very much. We're out of time, a little bit over time on that one.
Fiona MacLeod, who is running for the Conservatives, along with Liberal Mike Kellaway and Janet Reddick for the NDP, in our candidates debate for Cape Breton-Canso, Wednesday night in Glace Bay. There is a People's Party candidate, Brad Grandy. He wasn't able to make it. If you missed it and want to see the whole thing, it's at cbvotes.com. You can see the whole live stream archive there at cbvotes.com. Don't forget, coming up Wednesday of next week, it's Sydney Victoria. Your candidates in Sydney Victoria, there are 6 of them, including the Green Party, the Marxist-Leninist Party, and the People's Party of Canada on that list, along with the NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservatives. Should be a good conversation coming up Wednesday night, Centre 200 at 7 o'clock. Get your question in to have it considered at info_morning@cbc.ca.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.